Howdy. How's everybody? I'm feeling kind of flaky there with that weird background. I'm going to turn that back off. Stop. How are ya? Good afternoon. Did I spell that right? Add a couple uns to it. I got a third monitor set up for my Zoom screen, so I'm all handy fancy, but it's kind of far away. So it's kind of hard to see. Mildly frustrated at an assignment. Madison, you just always work so hard. Movie tickets. That sounds interesting. Fun, fun. You guys are always working on such great stuff. That's how this day's been. Maybe we're having some weird sunspot activity or something. I had a hard time getting anything to work this morning. I could never access the pictures. Wait a little bit here till we have everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Did I do it? I don't think I did it. So much to work on. Okay, can you see my screen? In Discord, in our C# channel, if you look at the general channel, there is a link to today's attendance. I'm calling it attendance. It's sort of like a check-in thing. Make sure that this is in here. Yay. So if you would keep checking in for now, I'm not going to be counting attendance in the way that it was said in the syllabus because we won't be in class. So I do appreciate you filling that out just so I know who's been here, and that way I can keep track of things without having to have assignments due and stuff like that to make sure I don't need to withdraw anyone. They do want people administratively withdrawn if we haven't heard from them for 14 days. So do make sure you stay in touch, keep on top of things, at least check in. Sometimes I know that can be rough. In Discord, another thing since the last time we got together, created a Tfs channel, and the Tfs channel has some posts, a video of a problem solving session, you know, our Tfs server URL, a Stack Overflow article that is helpful if your project wants to be stuck in GitHub and you would like it to be in Tfs. Anything else that you come up with that you'd like to post to our Tfs channel, do that. I think it's got hopefully some information to help solve any sort of problem that someone might run into, kind of put it all together. We'll try to kind of keep doing channels like that. I think it's kind of nice to put our pieces of information together that way. All right, so another thing in our C# server, I do have pinned, go to general here, I do have pinned our Zoom session URL, and so I've been doing pretty good at getting all of our recorded Zoom sessions posted to YouTube. So again, if you miss one or there's something that you want to double check, it should be out there. Woohoo! All right, this week we're going to look some more at using Windows Forms, and we're going to kind of focus on the events and the code that we have associated with our events. There are, if you look at Canvas, the video link, there are a lot of videos posted. Some of them are super short, like just how to use a combo box, how to use a menu strip, checkboxes and radio buttons. This one is about WPF. WPF is Windows Presentation Foundation, and that is a way of creating a user interface using XML code. So it's a little bit more dynamic. We're using Windows Forms in our class because Windows Forms are so important and have such a huge install base. But WPF, might be the way things are going. So all of these videos are out here for you to use however you like. Go back then. So videos, in our overview, there is a link to that PDF, that textbook, and there are 2 or 3 chapters in that textbook that are very helpful, that have some step-by-step walkthroughs of doing forms-based projects. So I would strongly recommend them. One of the examples in the textbook is a form that keeps track of club memberships, the club form. So some code is pasted here for you in Canvas in case you want a working example of that. This week we have a discussion board, which is weird, right, for our seated class that's gone to online, but it was already there, I swear. And I want you guys to talk about compiled languages versus interpreted languages. A lot of you have had a chance to work with both now, to do a little bit of research and kind of state your opinion and support it. And let's see what we can find out about the differences between those two through a good discussion. We have an assignment this week that's a Windows form. We'll take a look at it later in a bit. All right, anything else? Hello World was due last week. I got some good feedback from people. Do let me know if you're having a problem. I'm happy to help you if you are and get things figured out. So like when we're working with TFS, students that are employees of OTC can have way different problems than students who are not employees. And, just depending on how things are set up on your machine at home, you could have some very different issues. So I don't mind working with you at all. That's what I'm here for, to help you with any sort of problem that you might run into. Well, last week we did our Hello World part do, right? We'd already done Hello World in a character-based world. This was our Hello World in the GUI land. And we need to do a little bit more practicing with our Windows forms. Before that, we had done a project where we created a class for our audio CD, and we're going to use that today. So let's open Visual Studio. In Visual Studio, I want to create a new project. And I'm going to use the Windows Forms app. And I want to name this one Audio CD Form. And I'm going to put 102 on the end of it for our class. And this, I've named the others beginning with audio CD, so we'll just kind of keep that group together. And this is going to be our first forms-based implementation. Check Add to Source Control if you've already connected to TFS. If you haven't, remember, it might try to grab you in GitHub. All right, I'm ready to create this project. I'm going to click OK. Okay, so here's my form, and I'm ready to do some work. Does your window look pretty much like mine, or you know where everything is? Remember, I've got the toolbox pinned so that it doesn't auto hide, because I want to be able to get to my toolbox while I'm working on my form design. I have my Solution Explorer up top and my properties window beneath, kind of in the standard default layout. If I were developing day in, day out, and I weren't teaching, I could have some of these windows off on my second and third monitors, right? So I could really spread things out. If I wanted to keep my properties window on my second monitor, I could. So that's what pinning and unpinning allows me to do, is move all those things around wherever I want them. And that's exactly what a developer is going to do. That's why we need 4 monitors, right? So I've got my 3, I just need 1 more. Now for my form, I want to change some of the properties on my form. So if you remember, we've got to click on our form to make sure our form is the current object in our properties window. I want to change the text property of my form so that I can change the title. And I'm going to make it say, form. How's that pretty long for you to type? And then that shows up as my title. Now, any other changes that I make to properties on my form will become my default for any of the controls that I add to the form. So I want to change colors and fonts and things like that here at the form level, and then that'll follow through. So I'm going to change first, I think, my background color, my back color. So I'll just use a web color. I don't want it to be the same as what I used for the morning class. So I'll go with like a nice teal. And then I think I want my 4 color to be something that'll show up on that. So I'll use a light blue. Pale turquoise, not too awful. All right, so that looks good color-wise. I'd like to also change my font because this font is a little small for us when we're working together. So I'm going to change it from 8.25 to 12. Now I could also change the font name if I wanted to. We're using Microsoft Sans Serif, and I want to kind of review what does that mean when it's sans serif. Get a quick response here. Basically, sans serif means, let me try what is. There we go, that was more like what I wanted. So whenever we're looking at our font, it's a typeface that does not use a serif. And a serif is the little lines that you see like on Times New Roman in some of the flowier, fancier fonts. We don't want those because we want all of our columnar data to line up. We want to be able to have things in nice organized columns. And if we were using a serif font where we had those little extra lines, some letters then take up more space than others. So it would be really hard for us to create a nice even column of data. So just a side note there on our font choice. So I think that's probably pretty good for my form. I don't see any other things that I really need to change too much. Now, when I increased the size of the font, it did increase the size of my form. So I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. Okay, you've got some good default settings set for your form. Let's save all that. And I'm going to veer off for a second. And I want to create our audio CD class. And we're going to copy that from our previous projects. So let me go to our previous project that I thought I had open. And you don't need to open yours, but you certainly can. What I'm going to do is copy the class. So I'm going to begin at the keyword class, and I'm going to go all the way down and copy everything except that last curly brace. And then I'm going to paste this into our Zoom chat. And it looks like I'm overflowing something. Because we didn't get our method. So let me get that last little bit and paste it in there again. It happened this morning, so that's why I was double checking. So somehow I'm just maybe have some sort of special character that it doesn't like or something in our code. But let me get it out. It's giving me a terribly hard time, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to paste this, and this should be our methods. So there's the rest of it. All right. So I'm going to copy this then. And I'll show you why I'm just copying the class and I'm not copying the namespace. I'm going to copy the whole thing again. Now I'm done with this project. So in our current project that we're working on, the first thing I want to do is create a new class. So let's add a class and name it Audio CD. And then let's paste our other class. Now, that may be a really clumsy, awkward way to do that, but I was able to get all the code to you guys without any problem. Hopefully. There are lots of other ways to do that in a much more elegant manner. One way would be to right-click on the project and say, Add Existing Item, and go to the old project and select our cdaudio.cs file, and that would pull that file into this project, a copy of it. And so there's lots of different ways. I could have used File Explorer and just copied and pasted it in the file system. Okay, did everybody get it okay? Now we should have namespace, our new project, and then the beginning of our audio CD class. All good? Okay, Logan, just create a new project, new Windows Forms project, and then create a new class and copy the audio CD class into it from our chat. Great. And we can get back to the form anytime. Now, if everybody's got this class, let's update it. I'm going to get rid of these unnecessary using statements. And I want to put some comments and things like that. So first, I'm going to do the 3 slashes. And my comment's going to be this class finds an audio compilation, because we decided we would call that a more accurate name. So in our class, the first thing that we have are our private data fields. So let's use that region statement. We'll use our region statement as a bit of a comment. So this region is going to be our private class data fields, and then we'll put the end region statement right after that. Now I could go ahead and minimize that or collapse it. And the next region that I have are my public properties. And remember, we use our public properties to expose that private data. I'm going to use the region statements to kind of hold our comments, and you're going to have different requirements for different companies. I know a former student that works like at DST or one of the big companies around here, he told me that they are required to put a comment block for every property. So just a lot of comments in that case. All right, there's the end of that region. And again, then we can collapse that if we want. We'll just kind of get it out of our way. And that leaves us at our constructors. And of course, our constructors are always public. Otherwise, other classes can't use them to construct an instance of our class. For this first constructor, I'm going to use one of the XML comments. This is the default constructor. Remember, this is the constructor that C# would automatically insert if we had no constructors in our class. Where are you, Chris? In the region statement, if you type # region and then # and region, those compiler directives let you collapse that area. Is that what you're talking about? Or do you want to take over the screen and show us? That was it? Okay. Because we've just done a lot of this stuff once. So you guys just yell anytime because we could clarify. All right, so we have that really awesome no arg constructor, but then we decided we needed another constructor because we didn't want to create those null CDs. So we have a constructor that requires all parameters. So that's going to be our constructor that we're using. And then that is going to be the end of our constructor region. Let me collapse that and make sure everybody's got it. We're kind of just viewing through our code as we're getting this all set up because we have so many different things to make sure we've got everything here. All right, so our next region then is our methods. So these are the behaviors. And in our class, we have our calculation method. So calculate the value of the media. This calculation returns something. It returns the cost. We could use that returns XML however we wanted. Some companies might say just leave it blank. Some might want to know the data type, but that's all right. We'll say it returns that. Now, our toString overrides system toString, and it is our audio CD to a, basically repeats all of those values in our audio CD. That's a lot of changes we made, making sure that we had everything in our class. We only are missing our default end region. And now we can collapse that region down. Way up here. And we should end up with this kind of view. So let's everybody get to that view. And then we can look at each section individually and make sure that we've got everything the way we want it. First of all, in our private data, we just have our 4 data elements. Then in our public properties, we have our menu items for those 4 data elements. If you remember our story about properties being like a bartender, this was what external classes can order, album ID with an uppercase A, and we'll go behind the scenes and get them our private album ID. So we have public properties, getters, and setters for each of our 4 data elements. I'm going to collapse that back down. Then we have our 2 constructors, our default no-R constructor, and our fully parameterized constructor. And finally, our 2 methods, one that calculates the value and one that overrides our toString. Okay. How are you doing? Is everybody good? I've got 1 thumbs up. Awesome. More of them, more of them. Everybody okay? Do we not also have the display output? The display output medicine was in our tester, so we don't have that now because we didn't copy that over. But because we already have our toString method, we can run that now from our form. So good question. Yeah, it's not needed. So great. All right, so the reason I want to make sure everybody's got everything so carefully is because I'd like to add to our class, I'd like to add 1 more data field. Let's add a genre. And the reason I want to do that is because a genre is going to really lend itself to us having a radio button on our form, and that'll be good for us, good practice. So let's add that in our data fields. We're going to add it as a char data type. Now I need to add a public property for that. So in our properties, I'll add it at the end. I want them to be in the same order. It would be char. And for the getter, I'll just send the genre back to the caller. For the setter, I'll set our genre private data field equal to the value that was passed to us. So perfect, we're all implemented now. Now, in order to get the genre into our CD, our audio CD instance when it's first instantiated, let me collapse this down. We need to update our constructor that requires all of the parameters. So let's see, I'm going to come up here and press enter so that it's not so long. So same thing, just 2 lines now. And I want to add this new parameter at the end. So it's going to be a char data type, and it's going to be our genre. And we want to into our audio CD instance that we're creating. Now, one thing, since I've already created comments up here, I kind of need to copy that last line and add a new one. It would have done the 3 slashes for me for our genre. Another thing that needs to be passed in. Okay, so now we've added that new data field to our constructor. One more place we should add it is our toString. So let's check it. In our toString, we're already outputting information for all of our other data fields. So now we need to add our new genre data field. So let's just say genre. Go to a new line, and that should be all we need to add that in. Does that look okay, Madison? My mouse is getting stuck. Okay, great. All right, so now we've got our class copied from that other project. We've updated it to meet our needs, and we're going to use it now in displaying information to our user on the form. So I'm going to save all. Lots of updates here that haven't been saved. And now I'm going to go back to designing the form. Shouldn't have any errors. Does anybody have any errors? We want to get rid of those. Oh, you guys were so good. All right, let's go to design of our form. Now, for my form, I think I want to start with a heading at the top. So I'm going to use a label, and I'm going to put something here like, let's see, change the text property. Audio CD maintenance. It kind of repeats the title of the form, but boy, it happens all the time. I want this to be a bigger font. I want it to kind of really stand out. So I'll go maybe like 22. It's kind of my title. Now, when we're working with controls on our form, there are a lot of properties that we can use to kind of customize things, but there are some we can use to make sure that things look all right in different states. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to run this and see my pretty form with just that label on it. Now, if I were to maximize this form, my label would kind of stay in the same place. So we have some options we can use to control that sort of thing. One is the dock property. Right now, if I look at the dock property, oh, okay. Chris, just if you closed your toolbox, just do view, toolbox. I think Control X, Control W, X. Okay, so you have to do Control W first. I'll let you try those. Okay, so let's find doc. Back to my label. And the doc property lets me change what I kind of want this label attached to. So I guess I could say I want it attached to the middle. Let's try it. It just puts it up to the top. Let's run this. And then of course it stays there if we resize. But I could try docking in different ways, like on that side. And then when we ran, if we maximized, it would stay on that side. So notice how sometimes Windows forms might be designed in a way to take advantage of some of the facilities. So I don't really have a way to keep it in the center, but I can definitely keep it on the left or the right hand side of the form. So sometimes we'll see things set up that way. We're like, I don't like it that way, but you got to work with the tool. All right, so we've got this pretty label on here. Let's put some more labels on our form, and I just want like 4 real fast. I want a label that is for our audio ID. Another label for our compilation name. Number of tracks. And we have our cost. Finally, our genre. So you can see how I just added all of those labels real quick. You get it to anchor in the center. Here, I'll stop share. Show us what you did, because that anchor thing is driving me crazy. Show us, please.
All right, so what I did was on the label right there, I was looking real quick and I saw there was this anchor property that was set to top left. So it gives you this diagram. It was set to top and left. If you uncheck left, it'll anchor it to the top and it'll keep it in the center.
It's mine showing that now, so it kind of changed on you. Awesome.
And then if you run it, it'll stay in the center there. Oh, that's not maximized.
That looks good. Very good.
There you go.
All right. Yes, it is very nice, George. We're correct. Get share. Beautiful. Okay. So I just stuck all these labels on here. We're going to fix that in a minute. And I want to add like something for the user to type in, right? So like a text box is the normal control that we use for things like that. So let's look in our toolbox. And remember, I'm looking at all Windows forms. And I'm going to find the text box tool. I want to create a text box up here for our audio ID. And notice you can really draw your text box and it'll keep the size that you draw it. Now for this first text box, by default, it was named text box 1. We've been kind of keeping those default names for other things, but I don't want to do that for our text boxes because it would be really messy to have text box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It just gets way out of hand. So instead, let's name this one text box ID. Now, where is your name property? It should be up at the top of all of the properties, no matter how you have things sorted. But I'm sorted with the alphabetical sort. So if you have the categorized sort, you might have to look through to find the name, but I think it's still at the top. Now, sometimes people will leave different prefixes for these different data types, different controls. We're just going to leave the whole word text box, even though that's a little long. I think in the end it'll be clearer for us. Okay, so we have our audio ID text box. Let's add another text box. And this one, we'll make this be our text box. And the next thing we want is for our number of tracks. Well, a text box is fine, but sometimes for things like an integer number that has a limited value, a numeric up-down control might be a little bit better choice. So let's try that. I'm going to grab this numeric up-down and draw it on the form. So a numeric up-down, this has the clicky increase, decrease buttons, and it has some great properties. Let's name it first before we look at those. This numeric up-down is going to be our num tracks. And some other things that we have property-wise. With our numeric up-down, we can specify like how many decimal places we want. Ours is going to be integer, so we don't need any decimal places. We can set the increment value. We can set the beginning value. I'm going to change ours from 0 to 1. And then on our maximum, let's say our maximum is going to be like 50. That's a lot of tracks in a compilation, but I don't want to really get much less than that. Now we could also change some other settings if we wanted to. Got all sorts of cool things. Numeric up, down. So I think that's about all we need to change. Oh, but notice in our numeric up, down, we don't have a text property. And for our label, we saw last time that the text property was the one that always contained the data that we saw. Like, how do we read it? Well, with a numeric up, down, the property is value that contains the data. So we would choose our value property. Okay, our cost then, even though it's a number, we don't have any other great things to use for that. So we'll add another text box. And then for our genre, I'm going to wait for a little while. We'll implement it here in a minute. All right, so my form does not look very good. Let's start cleaning it up a little bit. The first thing is I've got everything kind of here in the middle. I'd sort of like to move it a little bit and maybe make my form a little smaller. So I can do rubber band selection. Start over here and click and hold your mouse button down and drag to select all of your controls. And then you should be able to move the whole bunch of them around on your form. However you want. Make that a little bit smaller. How did you add the third box? This one, numeric up, down. So in your toolbox, make sure you're looking at the All Windows Forms category, and then you should be able to find the numeric up, down. Just a minute, Madison. Okay. So now everybody make sure you can do that rubber band selection. You got it? It's working? All right, now I want to try selecting all of these labels because they're looking kind of ugly. So I'm going to select the first one and then hold my control key and select the others. Now, whenever I have multiple controls selected, you should be able to find this toolbar. this layout toolbar. If you're not seeing it on your view menu, go to toolbars. Where is it? It's not showing me. Sometimes I just get blind. There it is. Toolbars. I was like, I see toolbox, I see toolbox. I can't find toolbars. Toolbars and layout. Now this layout toolbar has all these different icons on it. So what I can do with them, for example, my labels are kind of in a little stair step pattern here, and I would like to line them up. So I can use the align lefts option, and then I'll line them up. I could also, let's see, I'd like to make my vertical spacing equal so that in between them, there's an equal amount of space. I could also, where's that one? Make them all the same height. So they should all be the same height. I need to do it in the right order, right? So that lines up my labels. Now let's do the same thing with our controls. I'm going to select the top one, and I'm going to make sure my labels were deselected, and I'm going to use the control key to select the other items. Now I want these to be aligned on the left, and I want them to be the same height, and then I'd like to make them vertically the same distance from each other. Now you can use, there's a lot more controls up here, like making things the same width and things like that. So depending on what you're working with. So I want to fix these a little bit more. My number of tracks is obviously way too big. I'll resize that a little bit. And then my audio ID, let's say we've decided that our audio ID is going to be 5 digits. So in my text box properties, I can find the maximum length and change that from 32,767, let's say 5. That should be plenty big enough. And then since I made that 5, I can shrink that text box down quite a bit. I'll try to make it about even with that numeric up down. So notice that alignment line showing up to help me see that they're even. My cost I can probably make a little bit smaller. All right, so the great thing about forms is we could play with them forever, right? And just keep designing things. And that's why there are people whose jobs are create the user experience, because they get really involved and they know exactly what people like and things like that. So really important. Let's run this, see how it's looking. Okay, looks pretty good. Numeric up down does some things. So that's what we wanted to make sure all of our controls are working. All right. So let's put some code in. First of all, we saw last time that when we put in our OK button, we associated code with the event of somebody clicking that button. A lot of items in Windows Forms fire events like that, and we can associate code with those events. So to create values that display in our form when it first displays, we could use the form load event. So an easy way to create that is to just double click on a blank spot in your form. So I'm looking at my form, I'm going to double click a blank spot. Okay, got a form load. I can hide my toolbox, and I can slide these out of the way. I could auto hide them, but I'll just slide them out. Now I'm going to put a comment here. Where form load executes before the form is displayed. We could also use constructor, which is kind of right above, right? So public form 1 is our constructor, and the form load is kind of like our event procedure code. So for our form load, let's put some data in so that it looks like there's something already there. So the first data field we have is our audio ID, and our data property is our text property. So let's set that equal to a number, like the number 0001. Let's run now. If we did everything correctly, we should see that 1 showing up in our audio ID text box. Everybody good? Got it, got it? All right. So that gives me an audio ID. Next, I want my album. I can never think of any albums when I'm under pressure. It's always just crazy, man. Let's make one up. How's that? We made our own. Now, that gives me my album name. The next thing that I need is that number of tracks. And that was a numeric up-down property. We set our numeric up-down num tracks dot value. And we already have that default value of 1. So I don't really need to change that. So I'll just get rid of that. But I do need to set my cost. Did I forget to name it? It looks like I did. Let's go check. Form design. Here's my cost. Oh, I did. Look, it's still named text box 1. I don't want that. So I'm going to name it text box cost. Bad of me. So now I can go back to my code. That, and so IntelliSense helps us to know if we have a problem like that. So I'll just say that this is $2.50. Now I'm not putting a dollar sign in as a placeholder because it would be kind of messy for us to get rid of the dollar sign, but we could if we wanted to. And then that's all we really need at this point because we haven't started working yet on our genre. And our numeric up down gives us a default value already. So let's run this. Beautiful. So now here we have some data. We can just kind of see what it looks like and see how we can move things onto our form. Great. So now I want to go back to my form design. We're looking at our form1.cs, the actual code, and we can go back to our form design. And I'd like to include a button. So I'm going to find my button control. And I think I'm going to kind of put it down here. And this is going to be my OK button. So I'll just make it say OK. And I'm going to name this button OK. Now, if you notice, I'm naming things that we're going to refer to in our code, like text boxes and numeric up downs and OK buttons And things like labels and things that just display on our form, we're not as concerned with. Now my button has a little bit of a bug. So I'm going to change this back color to a different color and then back to the correct color, and that should fix it. Just weird. And then for my OK button, I'd like to have a click event. So I can double click my OK button and that will create the click event. On slashes. I'm going to do this. This event will fire when the OK button is clicked. It will feed the data load to our class instance. So we're going to use our class here and create an instance of it, and then take all that data that the user typed in to actually fill up our class properly. So we want to use our audio CD class. We're going to create an instance of that called myCD. It's going to be empty. We're going to use that default no-arg constructor, but we do need to have that new keyword. So create our new audio CD, and then let's load it up. Our CD, let's set our album ID equal to our text box. And again, we're always using that text property. So whenever we have a control on our form, we can think of it as just a variable. It's just a variable. It's just that it's a variable that has a two-part name. It has the control name, a dot, and then the property. So this variable, text box audio ID.text, is just a variable, and that's going to give me whatever the user types in that box. Next. Now our number of tracks is going to be equal to our numeric up-down num tracks dot value. So again, we don't have a dot text property for a numeric up-down. It's upset with me because it's saying the numeric up-down gives me a decimal, and your num tracks is an integer, and I can't do that explicitly or implicitly. So let's make it explicit. Say, cast it as an integer, and that ought to take care of that. We can cast it as an integer because we know that's a safe thing for us to do, because we know the numeric up down is making sure that's a valid number. Now, when we're working with our cost, things are a little bit different. We don't have any error checking in for our cost field, so that's something that we would have to work on later. So we're going to say that our cost is just directly from our text box, so we could have a runtime error. Now we can't convert the string, our text field, into a decimal, so I'm going to use the convert method to decimal. Now remember, I just cast it up here because I knew it was safe. Here I'm going to do the convert, and it's going to crash if there's any sort of problem. So either way. All right, then the only other thing we're missing is our genre. So we'll be implementing that in just a moment. Now that we have our CD all updated, let's use a message box to see all that data. And I just want to see our myCD to string. And because I've got that in that message box, I have to tell it that I want to use the to string method. Okay, so we're data from the form text boxes, put it into instance. Trying to think of the way I hear people say that. So in this case up here, we're loading the form fields, and down here we're reading our form fields. So let's run this. So I think I'll change everything. I'll make that a different number. Let's call this something else. We'll say that this has 14 tracks. With the numeric up down, I can do the clickers or I can type it in. And I'll say my cost is $225. Now I just want to make sure that in my message box I see all this data. So I'm going to click OK. Now there's my toString. Here's my ID, my album, number of tracks, the cost, and it's a really expensive one. That sounds about right. So it's all working. Yay! Okay, questions? Are yours working? Everybody working? Say, oh, I've got 2 yeses. I see yeses. I got a thumbs up. Some more yeses. It's counting them for me. Oh, yes, myself. Thank you, guys. Okay, so good. So we've got this really awesome application working, and we need now to implement our genre. I've kind of left that out to show you how we would do that. So let's go to our form and put that in. I want to pin my toolbox back down. And what I'm going to do with our genre is create radio buttons. So there's choices. And with radio buttons, those are the circles. Remember, we kind of have this Windows standard that has become a standard for everything. That if you have choices that are circles, you can only pick one. Of course, if we had a checkbox that was a box, then we would be able to pick multiple. Otherwise, they work exactly the same. Now, because my radio buttons allow a choice and will limit the user to one, they need to be grouped together. So I'm going to move my OK button kind of out of the way, and I'm going to find the group box. Find the group box control, and let's draw a group box on our form. The group box control is just that. All it is a container to hold other things. I want to find its text property and change it from group box 1 to genre. And then I'm going to find that for color and fix it because it's got that same bug as the button. Go back to what I want. Now, I don't really need to change anything else in my group box control because I probably won't refer to it in my code. So let me delete this label. I don't need that genre label anymore. And I'll move this group box up a little bit. And then maybe I'll put the button kind of down beside it. So you guys can decide. Beautiful form layout. Now, in our genre group box, we're going to have radio buttons. So let's find those. And our radio button, first one, it's got the little circle to click, and then it has the text properties showing up beside it. Let's make this first one be, what do we want? We'll call it classical. Now, some of the other properties that you have on your radio button control, this right to left one, I swear I couldn't find it this morning to save my life. Let's switch it. Notice how that changes. That puts the text property on the other side of the circle-y thing. You can set it to inherit. And then we have a lot of docking options and anchoring options. So lots of ways to associate this control with other controls. The most important thing to us right now is that we got this radio button inside our group box. Now let's give it a name. Let's call it radio button classical. And then I want another radio button. I'm going to put this one under it. We'll make this one be, I'm going to do my text property first. Make this one hip hop. And then I want to name it radio button hip hop. And one more. This one will be rock. So 2 places usually is a minimum. Our text property and our name. One more. Kind of make it even. This one, let's make it jazz. Okay, now I need to clean those up a little bit. Again, I can select these first 2 and align their lefts. And I can do the same thing with these 2. And of course, then I could make sure that these ones are aligned at the top and that these ones are aligned at the top, which it doesn't look like they are. Very good. So again, we have a lot of control over how we want our form created. Now we can run this and we can already use our radio button. And actually it's kind of a good test to make sure that all of your radio buttons are in the right group box to, you know, just run it like this and make sure that you can only select one. If one of the radio buttons is not really inside of this group box, you might be able to select 2. How could that happen? Well, sometimes if you created it, it's not inside of it. Sometimes we might forget and add a group box and then copy and paste radio buttons into it, and that sometimes works well, sometimes not. So we just got to make sure. Okay, yay, we got radio buttons now. Now when we're working with radio buttons and group boxes, our default event is going to be clicked. So if somebody clicks on one of these, that's just the thing, it's clicking a button, right? It's going to change a value. So we could have code associated with that click event. For ours though, we're going to be looking at putting all of our code in our OK button. So let's go back to our OK button code. And I want to put it right after our cost. So whenever our users are selecting a genre, they're going to be selecting a text value like jazz. But in our class, we only have a char to hold that. So we're just going to keep a code. So if radio button that is classical is checked, and we want to set our genre equal to a C. So a couple of things, remember a char data type, I use single quotes instead of double. Else if our radio button hip hop is checked, we want to set our genre to H. And of course, we're safe here because we know that our radio button control in our group box made it to where only one could be selected. R for rock. Else if our jazz is checked. So notice our checked property is a Boolean, either true or false. So only one of these can have the checked property. Lastly, if none of those, we'll say it's unknown. And then finally, we'll output our message box. Let's try it. I can try hip hop, click OK. Now I should get all my other stuff that was already there, and then my H for hip hop. So that looks good. Let's try another one, rock. And there's my R for rock. Yay. So it's okay. That looks good. I'd like to change my class though a little bit. So let's go right now to our audio CD class. In our toString, I'd like to be able to output the long string name of our genre along with the code. So instead of just having like the C, I'd like to also output classical. So let's create a property for that. I'm going to scroll down because I want to put it after our genre property. Now for this property, we're going to return a string value, and let's call it genre string. So we're only going to have a getter, so we're not going to let anybody set this value. And if somebody asks for it, then we want to basically do the opposite of what we did in that OK button. So let's go back to our OK button and copy that code. Are you with me? I'm in the wrong place. Right here. All my radio button code. I'm going to copy it. Now I can't put this code in our audio CD class and just figure it out at that point, because our class can't be associated with that form. That form is just the user experience, just the user interface. It needs to be separate from this, our business procedure. Let me paste this. Okay, so in our genre string, we're going to say determine which genre and we're going to say if genre equals C, I need two equal signs there, right? And I want to use the lowercase genre. If our genre equals C, then we want to return I'm going to try to do the same thing here. If genre equals H, let's return else if genre equals R, that would be our rock code. And if it's J, we return jazz. Finally, we'll return unknown. So we can create a getter like this. We could have made this into a whole method, but we can use a getter and setter auto property like this in C# to make it really super easy to get this information back and forth. So we can say that, hey, if somebody wants to know what the string value is, we've got it. Now I'm going to change all of these to use the data field instead of the property. It wouldn't make much difference in our execution, but it could. Now in our toString, let's call this genre string. So at the very end of our toString, after our genre, a little bit more to our message. With our genre string. Now we should be ready. We've created the property and we've called the property by including it in our toString. So let's try it. So if I just click OK right now, I should get unknown, you, and unknown. Good. Now I'm going to try a category and I get my H and my string value. Okay, so lots of ways we can handle that in C#, but that takes care of it for our particular genre. Can I see some other people's? How's everybody doing? Any questions, problems? I want to end my share so I can see some others. Let's see yours.
So here's mine. It's pretty much the same, although I did notice that my value calculation must be a bit off because it's showing like 10 times what I think it should be.
It's a pretty bogus calculation. I think it's just a bogus calculation, so that's okay.
Yeah. But
Looks
other than that, all seems to be working fine.
I like it. It looks good. Good job.
Thank you.
Anybody else? See which awesomeness you've got. Let's see if it's working. I'm not seeing any others. Are we all having trouble? Do we have trouble that we need to help you with? Let's get you helped if so. so we can fix you up.
I think I had to get up and do something, and I think I missed the part where you went over like how to get that message box to work right with the button.
Let's see what you've got, and we'll fix you up. That'll be good for everybody.
So my situation's weird. I don't actually have Visual Studio on my desktop computer. It's on my laptop, but
Oh, okay.
I'm zooming through my desktop.
Okay.
So that's a reason why I can't share right at the moment.
No problem.
But I was just wondering if somebody could pull up like where that like the functionality, because everything of mine works pretty much the same except for like when I click the button, the message box just isn't coming up, and I don't remember. Like I have the message box dot show on the button OK button click.
But it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was another step that I missed or not.
Well, let's go look. That's an excellent problem because it's a really important thing. So I'm going to go back to the form design, and in our OK button, whenever we have a problem like that, we can look at the events. So right now, when I click on the OK button, I'm looking at properties for that button. If I click the lightning bolt, I'm going to go to events, and I should see my button OK click event there under the click event.
Yeah, I got it.
Have you got it?
Yep, I just got it. It
So
was
now,
the event was named differently than what I called it in the class.
so did you get to it? Is it
Yeah.
running it okay?
Yep.
So one thing to do for that, because it's a common problem that happens to all of us a lot, I like to just set up the first few lines in the debugger and make sure that it's running, and then that way you've already got it set up in the debugger. So just make sure you always go back to your properties.
Okay.
It looks good. So that is one that happens to a lot of people, and it's super frustrating because you don't know what's going on. Like it won't do it. Looks good. Anybody else? Troubles that we can fix? Good. I think we're in great shape. Let's save all this. And I want to take a look at our assignment. This hot and cold game. This one is due a week from Wednesday. Now, this Wednesday, we have Frankie as our guest speaker. So he was supposed to be with us last Wednesday, but with all of the changes and everything, we decided it was best to wait until this coming Wednesday. So Frankie will be here starting at 12:30. He'll be on our Zoom session. He's got all of you guys' questions and stuff already. So we'll give him probably an hour, depending on how things are going. It could be a little longer, a little less, depending on how many questions you have for him and stuff like that. And then after that, we'll just have a really short, quick update to see how everybody's doing, see if anybody needs any help or if there's any problems, anything like that. So that's why I wanted to take a look at this one today, because Wednesday we'll be kind of tied up with Frankie. And I do want you guys to come and talk to him. That's one thing that makes me sad, that we won't be in class, that you won't get to meet him, or he won't get to meet you guys. He's really done a great job. He's only been out of OTC for a really short amount of time. He's had some really great opportunities, and he is really well thought of at Jack Henry already in the group that he's in. So he's a great person to have on your side, and I'm glad that he's got time to come talk to us. So what this project is going to give you a chance to do a little bit more forms-based stuff. And I want you to have a fun time with it. Make it be a number guessing game. And you can kind of make the interface work however you like. It is recommended that you just have a text changed event so that you can keep track of when the user gives you a number, that you can use that number to see if it's the right one. Now, you're going to have a way to kind of tell them whether they're getting closer or further. So when they make a guess, you're going to compare it to their last guess. And if they're further away from the number than they were, they're getting colder. But if their new guess is closer than the previous guess, then they're getting warmer. So you want to use the background for color or back color on your form to kind of communicate that information. See what you can do with it. So have fun with this one. Now you're going to use the text changed event. So let's look at that real fast. If I come to my cost field and I go to my events and I say, oh, I want to create a text changed event. I'm going to just double click here and that'll create an event for me. Now I have this text changed event. I'm going to put a message box in here. And I'm just going to say changed every time this event fires because I want you to see how often it fires. I'm going to run this and you're going to see it's already fired just in the form load because we put that cost default value into that text box. So that makes it be changed. Now, when I'm working with it, every time I type something, it'll be changed. So notice it's not just when you're done typing, it's each time you type. So if I backspace, no matter what.
You're not sharing at the moment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's like, don't you see? You guys have to give me a hard time. Say that sooner. So what I did while you guys were blind is I created a text box cost text changed event. And then I just put in this code to just pop up this message when this event fires. So it fires before my form even displays, my form load, and then anything that I type. So notice it can't tell when you're done typing, can only tell that you typed something. Now I want to go back to the events for this cost field, and I'm going to delete that to get rid of that event procedure. And then I can go back to my properties. Okay, so as you work with your text changed event, it's going to do some surprising things to you. So that's the way it works. And you'll want to do some checking to make sure people are only typing in numbers. Any other questions? I've gotten great messages about not sharing. I just wasn't seeing them. I can try to post our project to Discord. Remember, it will do you no good. The only thing you're going to be getting out of that is the code. If you didn't get that, what you need to do is go back and watch the video of our session to recreate it. So I guess I'm going to back up and re-answer that question and say, no, I can't post the project anymore. Because once we have all this work done with the form design, you'll be missing out on all of that and you won't know what to do with it. So you have to go back to the video. Now I've got a question, where are the videos? Well, on Discord, if you look at our C# channel, the URL to the playlist is pinned. So I'm posting it out, I'm out there as soon as I can. So it is much better for you to watch the video again and recreate the project than it is for me to give you the project. Because, you know, I don't mind giving people stuff, but you'll just be missing out on everything. Okay. Anything else? I'll get all that posted for you. Okay, we're not too bad time-wise. I was like, oh, I think we're okay. Be sure and let me know if you're having any trouble. Want to make sure to help you. This is just such a cool way to do things, and if it's something that's not clicking for you, let me know, and we can get it to click hopefully, and then you'll just take off and be doing great, awesome things. So let me know if there's any trouble. Other than that, Chris says he doesn't have an option to add his project to TFS when he creates a new project. Now, I'm just guessing, but my thinking would be that you're using Visual Studio Home Edition or one of the editions that doesn't include TFS. So remember, that's why we want to use Visual Studio Enterprise Edition that you can get from that Microsoft facility. If you are working with the Home Edition, I think you can add and remove features to get TFS, but that would be something that you would have to experiment with, because I think getting Visual Studio Enterprise is the way to go. Does that make sense, Chris? Do you have Home Edition or Professional? Yeah, I wouldn't know. You just have to do some Googling and see what you can find about that. I would say that's because you started out with Home Edition and then added the TFS feature, but that'd just be a guess. So, any other things that I can help with? Try to. Great. I'm going to shut down the session. Please let me know if you need anything.